Thank you for watching or listening to this free podcast of the Young Turks. We want to make sure that you get some portion of the show every day. But if you want the full show, which is actually 5 segments, come become a member and support independent media as well. tytnetwork.com/join. Meanwhile, enjoy the free podcast. Fun and exciting show for you guys tonight. It's the Young Turks. I'm your host, Cenk, and we've got stories on top of stories. If you're progressive, if you're anybody, you really want to hear what Ed Schultz recently said about his time at MSNBC. It backs up what I have said. Actually, I think it goes further. And if you're thinking that they were not covering Bernie Sanders on purpose, well, it turns out he has an inside story that absolutely confirms that. That's an amazing story. Don't miss that. That's a little bit later in the program. Michael Cohen's in a world of trouble, and hence so is Donald Trump. I'm going to give you the details on why that is, what kind of trouble he is in the state of New York, and then what one of Donald Trump's former lawyers said about the kind of trouble that Trump is in beyond whether Michael Cohen is going to flip. So that's amazing. Unfortunately, another African-American man has been shot and killed, this time for the very dangerous act of sitting in a parking lot in Walmart, unarmed as usual, 3 other civilians in the car, and the cops shot up the car. Look, we'll tell you all about that. It's a big show. I'm thinking of doing a new segment too. Oh, by the way, on Rebel Headquarters tonight, a clown, a literal clown. Okay, so you'll enjoy that. That'll be fun. Thinking of starting a new segment called Dirty Diane soon, where I show you the corruption that Dianne Feinstein is engaging in every single day, as an example of the corruption that is going on in our government nonstop that no one else talks about. In fact, I've got a TYT Investigate story later in this program about that corruption, not about Feinstein, but about the Republicans. So, with all that being said, let's get started with I don't know if it's the best story. Yeah, it is. It's the most fun. It's awesome. It's about Ted Cruz, always fun. You see the graphic. There's no way this story isn't going to be great. So, here we go. Now, Ted Cruz was claiming to be a man of principle, and when he was running for the 2016 primaries, he was furious at Donald Trump, and understandably so. Trump had called his father a murderer, made fun of his wife. I'll get into that in a second. He has changed his tune today in the most wonderfully humiliating, debasing way. I will get to that. But first, I want to remind you the context here and why Cruz was mad and what he had said about Donald Trump when they were running against each other in 2016. He had called Donald Trump, quote, utterly amoral. He also called him a pathological liar. He wasn't anywhere near done. He said that Trump was a narcissist at a level I don't think this country has ever seen. By the way, all 3 of those quotes are the most correct things that Ted Cruz has ever said in his career. Those are all true, and boy, did he have a reason to be upset. So here is what Trump had said about Rafael Cruz, Ted Cruz's father.
You know, his father was with Lee Harvey Oswald prior to Oswald being, shot. I mean, the whole thing is ridiculous. What is this, right prior to his being shot? What was he doing with Lee Harvey Oswald shortly before the death, before the shooting? It's horrible.
Yeah, it is crazy. He was accusing the senator's father of murdering a president. Okay, if somebody said that about my dad, I don't think I'd kiss and make up. And Cruz did, as you're about to see in a minute, and he kissed him in an interesting place. So, but I'm not done yet. He also made fun, Trump did, of Ted Cruz's wife, not only of his wife, but of her looks. He had threatened to spill the beans on her, whatever that means, in an earlier tweet. And then he retweeted this, where it said, no need to spill the beans, the images are worth 1,000 words, showing an unflattering picture of Senator Cruz's wife and a flattering one of Donald Trump's wife. Oh, he's such a bad guy, unreal. So, what did Ted Cruz do today? He wrote the essay praising Donald Trump for being named one of the most powerful people in Time magazine. They have their annual issue of the 100 people that Time, in essence, celebrates. And of all the people in the world that could have written that essay about Trump, Cruz wrote it. And listen to this sniveling politician. Here's what he says now. President Trump is a flashbang grenade thrown into Washington by the forgotten men and women of America. The fact that his first year as commander-in-chief disoriented and distressed members of the media and political establishment is not a bug, but a feature. Now, all of a sudden, praising Trump like he's some sort of hero, representing the forgotten men and women of America. Perhaps one of the forgotten women was your wife, and one of the forgotten men was your dad. He's not done. He says the same cultural safe spaces that blinkered coastal elites to candidate Trump's popularity have rendered them blind to President Trump's achievements on behalf of ordinary Americans. I don't remember you talking about his popularity during the campaign trail. I remember you saying something else. We're going to get to that too in a sec. But wait, he's not done kissing Donald Trump's ass like the beta that he is. All right. While wealthy celebrities announced that they would flee the country, he fought to bring back jobs and industries to our shores. While talking heads predicted Armageddon, President Trump's strong stand against North Korea put Kim Jong-un back on his heels. Is there any territory left on Trump's ass you have not covered yet? Pathetic doesn't begin to describe Ted Cruz. Now, I want to remind you what Ted Cruz had said back on the campaign trail when asked about his attacks on his family members. Here's video, watch.
I don't get angry often, but you mess with my wife, you mess with my kids, that'll do it every time. Donald, you're a sniveling coward, and leave Heidi the hell alone.
So will you support him as the nominee?
I'm going to beat him.
That never gets old. Yeah, sniveling coward. I mean, you are representing the forgotten men and women of America. You're an American hero. Oh, you're so sad. And when she asked that question, it was a great question by the reporter. Are you going to endorse him if he wins? He paused for so long because despite all the false bravado, at the end, he's a slimy politician. So he's like, I don't know. It depends on how it'll play out politically. Oh, you're so sad. And you want to talk about sad? I've got one more video for you. After threatening Donald Trump like that, during the same campaign, after he was beaten, he got cucked like this. Watch.
Hi, this is Ted Cruz calling. I was calling to encourage you to come out and vote on Election Day. This election is critical for the direction of our country, and I urge you to come out and support freedom, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. I just wanted to encourage you to come out and vote. Thank you, and God bless you.
That is the most wonderfully sad video I have ever seen. Sad. Okay, I'm not done with him yet. Let me show you my favorite picture of all time. Oh, are you okay, Ted? What happened? I thought you were going to beat him. I thought you were going to take on the sniveling coward. I thought you were going to man up, Ted. This guy, the first ad he ran in his new Senate campaign now, because Beto O'Rourke is coming to get him. I'm going to tell you about that in a second. The first ad he ran was talking about how real men in Texas act. Is that how they act, you cuck? All right, I'm not done. So now let's go to the latest polls. The poll from Quinnipiac University shows the two men, Beto O'Rourke and Ted Cruz, in a dead heat. 47% of registered voters in Texas support Cruz, the Republican incumbent, while 44% back O'Rourke, an El Paso Democrat. That is within the margin of error of the poll. Now, a lot of people are stunned by that. We are not. I predicted Beto O'Rourke's victory a long time ago. And I'll tell you why. Not only is Beto O'Rourke a really interesting politician, he's very progressive, he's running super strong, he's powered by grassroots, he doesn't take corporate PAC money, and he's outraised Ted Cruz, raised millions upon millions of dollars from small dollar donations. But that's not the main reason why. He's a great candidate, but that's not the main reason. The main reason is Ted Cruz has no spine. He has no moral center. He has nothing. A man like that is not going to win an election, an actual tough election. I don't care how red they think Texas is. Against a real candidate, and Beto is a real candidate, Ted Cruz is going to fold like he always does. You want to see a picture of Ted Cruz? This is it. And yeah, I'm doing it again. That's right, Ted. Okay, that's a picture of you folding. And you're going to fold again in this election. And now here comes the best irony. So Ted Cruz writes these fawning letters to Donald Trump, praising him to no end, and did the phone banking for him. Now it turns out not only is it not going to help, but it might actually hurt him in the state of Texas in his own election. The poll had another ominous warning, Texas Tribune reports. For the GOP, President Donald Trump was underwater in Texas, with 52% of respondents disapproving of him and 43% approving of his job performance. In other words, sucking up to Donald Trump is counterproductive in Texas. Oh, you poor dumb son of a bitch. Now, you want to know what Ted Cruz thinks of that poll? Here it is. See you. Wouldn't want to be you. This guy is a loser through and through. No way he wins that seat. He will lose in epic, historic fashion. Oh, it's going to be a great day in America. All right, I'm clear. Let's move forward. Come on, mired in the cuck. You know you love that. I'm a bad man. All right, now let's go to his opponent in that race, Donald Trump, back in 2016, and find out what his next presidential campaign might look like. All right, so CNN is now reporting that there are a whole heap of senators that are not interested in Donald Trump running for re-election. Now, I'm going to show you a compilation that we put together in a second, and you're going to love it. First, let me give you the reporting from Manu Raju here. A wide array of House and Senate Republicans are not yet ready to endorse President Donald Trump's bid for a second term, a reflection of the deep uncertainty on Capitol Hill over his political standing amid growing problems at home and abroad. Plus, he's a maniac. So they're like, oh, I don't know if this is going to work out. God knows if he's going to get arrested, indicted, whatever else might happen, impeached. But beyond that, their poll numbers are a disaster. So they're in a no-win situation. I'm going to show you those polls in a minute as well to give you a sense of why they're so equivocal. But understand how unprecedented this is. When you ask the senators and congressmen of that party about their sitting president, and they're like, I don't know, man. I've never seen that. If you had asked the Democrats under Obama, they would have been like, what do you mean, do I support Obama in his reelection? Of course! They would have said it on day one. They would have said it on year 1, year 2, year 3. It wouldn't have mattered. It wouldn't even been close. And even as much of a disaster as George W. Bush is, no Republicans wavered on his reelection in 2004. All right, now, more details. In interviews with a cross-section of more than 24 GOP lawmakers, and that's a lot, ranging from rank-and-file members, conservatives, and party leaders, many refused to say they'd back Trump's re-election bid, a surprise declaration given that members of Congress are typically quick to endorse sitting presidents of their own party without hesitation. Hardly any would offer a categorical endorsement of the president. That is stunning. I know we live in stunning times, but I've never seen a party back away from a president that significantly. You're like, Trump, what name so? Never heard of him. Now, here's some fun quotes for you guys. John Cornyn, now he's number 2 Republican in the Senate. How could the number 2 Republican in the Senate not support the Republican president? He said, I don't know what the world is going to look like in 2020. Wow, he won't back him. The world, is Trump still president? Is he in prison? I don't know what the world's going to look like in 2020. Wow. He said, but let's say it's not something I've given any thought to. No, Senator Cornyn, you've given a lot of thought to it. And that is you trying to backpedal out of there before you have to say, yeah, of course I'm not going to support him. Look at him, he's a clown. All right, so my favorite quote is from Senator Lamar Alexander. He said, look, I'm focused on opioids. Focused on taking them? What do you think of Donald Trump? I'm focused on opioids, okay? I don't think that's an opiate. Was that Coke? Anyway, so one more quote before we get to the clip. Roger reports, and others said they were still uncertain the president would ultimately stand for re-election, even though the White House and Trump himself have repeatedly said that he would do so, as he's hired a campaign manager, has been raising money and holding campaign rallies in anticipation of 2020. Unlike past presidents who have waited to announce their re-election bids, Trump made clear immediately after taking office that he's running again. God, I love that. They're like, I don't know. By the way, one of the most common quotes from all these Republicans, I don't know that he's running in 2020. I don't know that. It's like, no, I am. I'm running in 2020. I already named my campaign manager. I'm already raising funds. I'm already doing campaign rallies. I'm running. They're like, I don't know that he's running. Trump, what name so? Okay, now, our legendary producer, J.R. Jackson, put together this compilation, hilarious compilation of Republican legislators trying to back out of the building when asked if they would support Trump in 2020.
Will you back the President of the United States, Donald Trump, the standard bearer of your party, in his re-election bid?
I did not endorse the president for the Republican nomination.
Yeah, listen, I understand the kind of gotcha question you're engaging here.
Look, who knows whether President Trump's even going to run.
So I'm going to keep focused on the problems at hand, like the debt and deficit.
Look, we're going to burn time. We could be talking about other things.
Again, I'm focused on working and doing what I do.
I have no idea whether the president runs for re-election, nor what the field will be on the Republican side.
I think it's unusual that members of the media would be talking about the 2020 election in 2018.
And I'm not about to say who I would support for that.
You know it's way too early to be talking about the 20.
I haven't even thought about that election. I'm worried about the midterm elections.
Again, I think it is far too early to make a judgment.
But it's just way too early to even be talking about it.
Talk about what might happen and at that time is I think premature.
It could be a completely different world by 2020. We have a 2018 election first.
So I think it's way too early to weigh in on who one might support.
If he runs for re-election, are you going to support him?
I want to know who else is in the field.
Well, at least Corker is more honest about it. He's like, no, I might not support him. I want to see who else in the field. The other guys are like, backpedal. I got to get out of here. The most telling one was Ron Johnson's calling it a gotcha question. Supporting the president of your own party in his re-election bid is not a gotcha question. That normally would be the easiest question in the world. You'd wonder why they're even asking it, and it would be a definitive 100% and obvious yes. Calling it a gotcha question means, all right, you're trying to put me in a situation where if I support Donald Trump, I'm screwed, and if I don't support Donald Trump, I'm screwed. And that, in fact, is exactly right. So now let me get to the polling. One more quote from Congressman Mark Sanford. It's always funny to say that. Back from the Appalachian Trail, he said, I'm worried about my own race right now. Exactly. They're all worried about their own race right now. And what they see is this. What puts Republicans on Capitol Hill in an awkward spot is the fact that Trump's approval numbers remain rock solid among core GOP voters, standing at 85% among Republicans in a recent Quinnipiac poll. So if they back away from the president and say they're not going to support him, their base will be furious. They could get primaried, lose the primary, or their voters stay at home, get discouraged. So that's a definite lose. Well, how about when they go up for a general election? But if they side too closely with Trump, Raju explains, they risk alienating the broader electorate where his poll numbers have been historically low. So in a lot of the polls, he's in mid-30s, low 30s, and sometimes he struggles to get into the low 40s. The low 40s are a disaster, let alone the 30s. So in a general election, if they back him, they're screwed in the primaries. If they don't back him, they're screwed. And they might also be screwed in the general election, again, if their voters get discouraged and don't show up. They're in an absolute no-win situation. That's exactly where Donald Trump has put them. And that is why they're giving these non-answers, which are hilarious and deeply political. 2020, never thought about it. What's happening in 2020? I don't know. I'm pretty sure you know, and you know how screwed you are. Okay, so now let's go to another Republican who's screwed. Well, we're having a fun show today, right? First segment, they're all in some degree trouble. That's fun. The conservatives liked our coverage on 2016 election night.
We need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be, featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity. The UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, you must unlearn what you have learned. And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFTR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
Come and see. Come see 2018 election night. Oh, 2020 election night. Come see. Come and see. Okay, so here we go. Kris Kobach is one of the most anti-immigrant politicians in America. Donald Trump's a huge fan, of course. He's from Kansas. And he apparently, like his colleague Donald Trump, does not really like to follow the rule of law. So that has gotten him in some trouble today. And let me take you to Sam Levine's reporting at HuffPost on this one. He says a Kansas federal judge ruled Wednesday that Kansas Secretary of State Kris Kobach was in contempt of court for failing to follow her order to register voters who had signed up to vote at the DMV but had failed to present proof of citizenship. Now, if you're Secretary of State in your state, you might want to follow a judge's orders. That's pretty important. First of all, if you're anybody, I don't know if you know this, but in our country, you have to follow a judge's orders. But Republicans, they don't really care about the rule of law. They attack law enforcement like FBI. They attack judges over and over again and oftentimes don't listen to them. So that's the same case in Kansas. Well, that's going to have consequences. So Robinson, the judge here, told Kobach to make sure those voters were fully registered. Kobach assured her that he would, and that he would send out postcards to any affected voter. So what he wanted to do was bar some people from voting. And his trick for doing that was, all right, now you got to show me that you're a citizen. Now, do you carry around citizenship papers with you? Because they had passed a law that you can get registered at the DMV when you're getting your license. It makes it easier so more people can register to vote and participate in democracy. That's a good thing. Here, he wanted to make it harder. When I went to the DMV to get my license, I didn't bring my passport. I didn't bring my birth certificate. Did you guys? Right? And he knows they're not going to bring it. He's trying to make sure that they don't get the vote. The judge says you can't do that. So for all the people you already barred, you have to send them a postcard. He tells the judge when he's in court, oh, sure, yeah, I'll do that, and inform them they actually can vote and straighten out the process. Did he actually do it? Of course not. So more than a year and a half later, the American Civil Liberties Union, which is representing the voters who challenged the Kansas law, filed a motion to hold Kobach in contempt, saying he had failed to send out the postcards and update the country's election manual to reflect Robinson's 2016 order. And he was held in contempt. Robinson imposed sanctions on Kobach on Wednesday, saying he had to pay the ACLU for attorney fees and that any further remedial measures would be decided when she ruled on the merits of the case. Remedial measures for Kris Kobach. That sounds really good. So looking forward to that. And I love that this right-winger has to go pay the lawyers at the ACLU. Now, let me give you more context. Robinson wrote that, quote, even if instances of non-citizens voting cause indirect voter disenfranchisement by diluting the votes of citizens, such instances pale in comparison to the number of qualified citizens who have been disenfranchised by this law. So the argument that Kobach and the Republicans were making is, well, if you have a whole bunch of people rushing into the DMV that are not citizens and they get to vote, well, that dilutes everybody else's vote, which were legitimate. Okay, that's an interesting point. So let's look at the numbers. Are they really diluting the vote? Is it a major problem? Or is the problem actually barring the legitimate voters from voting? So here's the numbers. The evidence shows only 3 instances in Kansas where non-citizens voted in a federal election between 1995 and 2013. And about 14 non-citizens attempted to register during that time. 3 in a huge span of time, about 8-9 years span of time. 3, that's it. In this one case alone, here, I'll give you these numbers. The court noted that the magnitude of harm caused by 18,372 applicants at motor vehicle offices who were denied registration. So she's saying in order to see if you might get one non-citizen who is registering to vote, and statistically speaking, it would likely be 0, especially in a pool that limited, but they wanted it to be larger. But let's say it's 1. I mean, there was only 3 from 95 to 2013. Let's say in this year, there's a rash of non-citizens trying to vote and there's 1. So in order to make sure that 1, or I'll grant you all 3, okay? The 3 are going to vote. You did not allow 18,372 legitimate citizens to not vote, to not get registered and block their ability to vote later. Well, she's like, that doesn't make any sense. You're doing the disenfranchisement. That's exactly right, guys. This story, it's fun that Kris Kobach's going to get punished. He's a really bad guy, very against immigrants. He claims undocumented immigrants, but now the Republicans have shown their true colors. They're also against what they call chain migration. That's just families immigrating here legally. They're also against legal immigrants. But the more important point is that the Republicans don't want you to vote. They don't want people to get registered. This whole idea that, oh my God, there's this big voter fraud is a giant scam. It's to make sure that they can block as many people as possible from voting, because they think the more people that vote, the more the Democrats have an advantage. The less people who vote, the Republicans have an advantage. That's been true for decades. Paul Weyrich talked about it back in 1980. He said, I don't want people to vote. If you're a Republican, you want people to vote less. The voters that exist already are on our side, and all we're doing is losing those voters. So don't let new people register. And that is exactly what the Republicans have been doing. So if you're genuine, it doesn't matter if you're progressive or independent, even if you're a genuine conservative and you actually care about democracy, you care about our country, you care about our Constitution, you know that more people are getting the door slammed in their face who are actual citizens, and that this is not, the voter fraud is not the real issue. You can see it in the numbers. The real issue is not letting people vote. And I know that they get to do propaganda on Fox News, and that wins over some people because they don't know the reality and they don't know the numbers. But when you go into a court of law, you actually have to prove your case, and they can't. The numbers show that they are not being honest, they are disingenuous, and now the law is coming down on Kris Kobach, and that is a great day in America. All right, we'll be right back. You're right in the middle of this podcast. We got another great segment coming up for you. If you'd like the full show, which is actually 5 segments, go to tytnetwork.com/join. You become a member, you support the show, you support independent media, and you get the whole 2-hour show ad-free every day. Let's go do it now. All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Gabby writes in, I literally paused the first episode of True North to watch TYT live tonight, halfway through the first episode, and already so jealous, yet incredibly impressed with John Iadarolla's antics north of the wall. So that's awesome. Thank you, Gabby. Brian Newton says, it's insane to conceive that people possibly live that far north, but they do indeed, and John found them, and so does Shavala. Monica T. Rodriguez on the shooting story says, even if he rammed into a car, that earns him an execution? Excellent question, Monica. Chris says, if any of the other people in that car died, they wouldn't be able to lie about all of them being suspects. They don't care about who they kill. So members of the day are James Foreman and Julie Zhang. Thank you guys. And in the postgame today, I'll tell you about the story of me leaving MSNBC. If you never caught that, and I'll give you a couple more stories from that I didn't get to today, including an insane Donald Trump tweet that I really want to break down, and then if we can, I want to do enzymes, science for the win in the postgame. tytnetwork.com/join. All right, what's next, Anna?
A Fresno State University professor is dealing with a firestorm following what she put up on Twitter in regard to Barbara Bush passing away. Now, I'm going to give you her tweets, and then we'll discuss whether or not she should keep her job. Keep in mind, Fresno State is part of the CSU system in California, meaning it is a publicly funded institution, and she is a tenured professor. But here's what she had to say. Her name is Rhonda Gerard. And she had tweeted, Barbara Bush was a generous and smart and amazing racist who, along with her husband, raised a war criminal. So you kind of get a sense of where she's at. She's not really buying all of the rest in peace tweets that followed news of her passing. Then she said, I'm happy the witch is dead. Can't wait for the rest of her family to fall to their demise the way 1.5 million Iraqis have. Bye. So people did not like what she had to say.
Of course.
And it led to Twitter outrage, which is common with Twitter. People are outraged about everything. She pointed to the comments as an example of, quote, what it's like to be an Arab American, Muslim American woman with some clout online expressing an opinion. The professor also taunted those attacking her, sharing a contact number that was that of Arizona State University's suicide hotline. And she said she was a tenured professor who makes $100,000 a year. She followed that with, I will never be fired. So tenured professors usually do have more protection, and the whole purpose for that is so they can do some academic research that could be controversial. They don't want to lose their jobs if they want to, dip their toe in something controversial. And so she's saying, I have protection. This is freedom of speech. But officials at the university didn't really respond in a way that makes me comfortable when it comes to protecting her freedom of speech. So I'll get to that in just a second, but I do want to toss to you, Cenk, and get some initial thoughts.
Okay, so why are people upset? So couple of reasons, most of them illegitimate. So number one, Barbara Bush is considered genteel, apparently, and so how could you do this to this poor woman? Well, no, she had very good reason to not like Barbara Bush. I was not a fan of Barbara Bush when she was alive for reasons that we're going to share with you, the quotes of Barbara Bush and what she said about other human beings. The second reason is you're not supposed to speak ill of the dead.
At TYT, we frequently talk about all the ways that big tech companies are taking control of our online lives, constantly monitoring us and storing and selling our data. But that doesn't mean we have to let them. It's possible to stay anonymous online and hide your data from the prying eyes of big tech. And one of the best ways is with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN hides your IP address, making your activity more difficult to trace and sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your network data to protect you from eavesdroppers and cyber criminals. And it's also easy to install. A single mouse click protects all your devices. But listen, guys, this is important. ExpressVPN is rated #1 by CNET and Wired magazine. So take back control of your life online and secure your data with a top VPN solution available, ExpressVPN. And if you go to expressvpn.com/TYT, you can get 3 extra months for free with this exclusive link just for TYT fans. That's expressvpn.com/TYT. Check it out today.
I don't know who made that rule. I don't believe that rule. And so when bad guys die, I don't care. I criticize them.
Let's please mention what the massive caveat is when it comes to those making the argument in regard to not speaking ill of the dead. Right now, we have countless people who are torn apart, smeared, and spoken about as if they're absolute criminals following their death that was caused by a cop shooting them while they were unarmed. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
So we speak ill of the dead in this country on a regular basis, on a daily basis. And my guess is the same people who are, defending Barbara Bush and saying that they're very offended by this are the same people who will look at someone like Tamir Rice and say that, he's playing with a toy gun that looked like a real gun, so he deserved to die. Or the people who will look at Michael Brown or a bunch of other people who were shot and killed by cops and mention things like, he smoked pot once in his life or twice in his life, so he deserved it. No, we get that all the time. So speaking ill of the dead is an American pastime at this point. So I'm not buying that.
So Anna, that's a great point, and I hadn't thought about it in that context. So anyone who did not speak ill of Michael Brown or Trayvon Martin maybe has a leg to stand on. All those commenters, none of them spoke ill of any of those people who were shot by cops. Please, this is selective. You can speak ill of the dead if they're the others, if they're black, they're progressives, there's anyone that you don't associate with. But if it's your people, how dare you? And by the way, one of the reasons everybody's outraged is because Barbara Bush is part of the club. She was part of the club, so everybody knew Barbara Bush, and everybody on TV was like, I do declare Barbara Bush was such a lovely person. No, she wasn't. She was generally mean-spirited. So again, I'll give you the quotes to prove it. No, here, I'll give you the quotes right now, okay? And then we'll talk about the university's reaction. When asked about the Iraq war, the one that the professor here alluded to, she said, why should we hear about body bags and deaths? It's not relevant. So why should I waste my beautiful mind on something like that?
Yeah, I would argue that someone who would make a statement like that does not have a beautiful mind.
Her son launched the invasion of Iraq. They're differing numbers, but they're all at a minimum in the hundreds and hundreds of thousands, as high as 1.5 million civilians killed. And Barbara Bush, when asked, hey, your son did this thing and it wound up getting millions of people killed. Basically, her answer is, they weren't me, were they? I'm still rich, aren't I? I'm still powerful. I still go to the same cocktail parties with all the people on TV and all other politicians. We're still having a grand life. It didn't bother my beautiful mind at all that your family was murdered. It didn't bother me at all. My son dropped a bomb on him. It almost seems like she's speaking ill of the dead. Interesting.
So then there was the infamous quote in regard to some of the refugees after Hurricane Katrina. Let's go to graphic 75. Barbara Bush told public radio program Marketplace that the evacuees who had fled their homes and were being sheltered in Houston's Astrodome, quote, were underprivileged anyway, so this is working very well for them.
She did not care about other people at all. I mean, you want to talk about, privileged elite, spoiled person who couldn't care less and had no empathy. I'm sorry, am I speaking ill of the dead? So look, on the day she died, we didn't do it and I didn't say anything about it. But now you're gonna go try to take someone's tenure away because they're saying things that if they had said them a day ago, you would have had a debate over it, but nobody would have gotten fired over it. But now your BS, rule that you apply only for your friends and only people on your political side of the aisle of speaking ill of the dead. Now all of a sudden she's a monster. No, Barbara Bush, who said, I don't care about other people. I don't want to bother my beautiful mind about the millions of people that are dead. I would argue said far, far worse things than this professor.
Yeah. Look, I wouldn't personally handle the tweets the way she did, but just because I didn't like that tone doesn't mean that I'm going to advocate for her getting fired. I have a lot of pride in the CSU system, and if she loses her tenure, if she gets fired, I will feel a lot of shame because she is a creative writing professor that the students love, and she did not lie about anything on Twitter. She tweeted something during her private time. She didn't say this in the middle of a classroom, and so you get to disagree with her. If you loved Barbara Bush, if you didn't like her tone, I get it. You can disagree with her. But trying to get her fired is especially hypocritical when the conversation involving universities right now is about free speech, right? Anytime you hear about universities these days, it's conservatives losing their minds because they think free speech is being violated on campuses. This is a publicly funded public university. And so I really hope that the administrators don't become complete cowards and turn their backs on this professor because there's all this pressure to fire her. So let's go to what the initial response was from the university. Graphic 72. Fresno State originally responded to the controversy with a statement by Castro, that is the president of the university, that said Girard's words were obviously contrary to the core values of our university, but that they were made as a private citizen. Well, I'm sure there was a lot of pressure to, go after her in a more aggressive way. And so on the talk radio station KMJ, the university president told the host, Ray Appleton, I want all of your listeners to know that I condemn the tone, substance, and timing of Dr. Girard's comments on Twitter last night. I want that to be unambiguous. And how do I feel? I was shocked, upset, appalled, just like everybody else. Now, it's unclear whether or not they're going to fire her, but they are doing so much damage control. It's a little laughable. The university's Twitter account also tweeted that they are flying the flag at half staff in memory of former First Lady Barbara Bush. Now, I'm fine with that. If they want to do that, awesome. I'm glad they're doing it. But it just seemed like a lot of damage control following all of this controversy.
All right, well, I'll tell you the comment that's the most disturbing is Graphic 70. They said Girard's comments were, quote, beyond free speech. This was disrespectful. No, that's not beyond free speech. I mean, free speech isn't meant to protect inoffensive speech. Nobody's ever going to say, you have a right to say happy birthday. You have a right to say, have a nice day. That's not offensive to anyone. The whole point of free speech and tenure is to protect potentially offensive speech. So if you don't understand that, you don't understand your job. But luckily, Ben Shapiro is on the case here. He's leading protests to protect the professor because him and his followers, they care so much about free speech on campus. And Crowder is there, and they're all there, and they're like, let's go, yeah. Professor Girard, we love free speech, right? Oh, no, they're not leading that protest. That's so weird. So weird, because I thought they were free speech advocates.
Let me ask you something. Is it offensive to have someone like Ann Coulter on a college campus who has essentially said that, immigrants who try to cross the border and then later get raped by our Border Patrol agents probably deserved it because they tried to cross into the United States illegally? Is that okay? I mean, look, we have fought for that type of speech to still occur on public campuses because we believe in free speech. So whether it comes to Ben Shapiro or Ann Coulter, let them speak, let them do whatever they want to do. Just don't show up to their speech and show them how unpopular their ideas are. But they would never do the same for a professor like this.
Yeah, so spare us your crocodile tears about free speech when the minute you're offended, what do you need, guys? Conservatives, what do you need? You need a safe space, right? Because you're a special little snowflake who got triggered by comments about Barbara Bush. So let's just call it what it is. And by the way, if you're a student at Fresno State, under no circumstances should you let her get fired. You should do protest on top of protest on top of protest to protect her rights to say things that are actually true about Barbara Bush. And don't let these cowards say, oh, well, if it's offensive, then I don't know if it's free speech or if your tenure is protected. Of course it is. That's the whole point of tenure.
We'll be right back.
Thanks for watching or listening to this free version of the Young Turks podcast. You know that the full show is at tytnetwork.com/join. If you become a member, you get the full show ad-free. We love you for watching or listening. Either way, there's going to be a new free podcast tomorrow. You can keep on doing that. But if you want to get the full show ad-free, tytnetwork.com/join. Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk, and I'll see you soon.